Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, a podcast about leaving self-doubt in the dust, punching fear in the face, and taking bold action toward your biggest dreams. I'm Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is my friend Carolynn and Ananian, making her second appearance on the show. I'm so excited. Say hi.
Hey.
I'm pumping you up like that, and I see the look on your face, which they don't get to see. It's fantastic, but
I'm pumped. This is great.
This is fantastic. I'm so excited. So tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
I'm a financial copywriter at Money Map Press. My specialty is retention and acquisitions, which doesn't sound too exciting until you mention to people that this is how you build and scale companies behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah. I think I've written about that a couple times in the Marketing Minute portion of my newsletter recently, but like customer service is part of your marketing. Retention is part of your marketing. Your willingness.
Product development, making the user experience smooth like butter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, smooth like butter. Well, it was interesting because like I've never paid someone to wash my drawers. And by drawers, I mean underoos. So like last week.
I was going to ask because,
last week because this Airbnb that I'm staying at, we're recording this in February while I'm in Flagstaff, doesn't have a washer and dryer. And so I was like, all right, if I'm going to go to a laundromat, might as well pony up a little bit of extra and have somebody wash and fold the whole thing for me so I can buy back my time. But then I got really scared about it and was like, what do I need to sort it? Do I need to give them special instructions? What do I need to do? So I called this local laundromat. And this woman patiently, like 10 minutes, answered my barrage of questions and was like, nope, we got that covered. Nope, here's all you need to do. If you want, I'll meet you at the laundromat and we can talk and you can finish asking your questions there. And she reassured me so much that I was like, hell yeah, business sold. But that is part of your marketing too. Like being willing to reassure someone and recognize that those questions are just someone that's seeking reassurance and almost ready to buy, almost ready. Now I'm totally sold.
I've heard one definition of sales is just easing people's resistance until you get them to the finish line. And then by that point, it's a no-brainer for them to say yes.
Yeah, they're feeling super reassured. I love it. So there's all kinds of stages in the marketing process that have nothing to do with the front-end acquisition of it. And it's all about fulfillment, keeping your customers happy, customer service, all that jazz. And that is what Carolynn specializes in, which I love. So before we started recording, we talked about a lot of shit, but and cars spinning out in the intersection here in case I get distracted or you hear a screech and crunching metal. But one of the things that we mentioned about that I thought was fascinating was this idea of leverage and how you can use it to advance and get yourself closer toward your goals. So let's just jump right in. Leverage, go.
Oh, yeah.
No pressure.
I guess it's been on my mind lately because I'm at a point in my career where people are asking me a lot of questions, especially people who are just starting out in copywriting. And all the questions come back to this same concept, leverage. First of all, this is a slightly related but different topic. People ask terrible questions.
Yes.
Right now. People do not know. And how far you go in life is determined by one of two things. It's determined by the people you have around you. And it's also determined by how good whether or not you know how to ask good questions.
Let me give you some examples of my favorite bad questions. And if you ask these questions, I love you. I'm sending
I already know what you're going to say, but
love and hugs and all of the compassion in the world, but stop asking this shit. I want to be a copywriter. How do I get started? Terrible question.
Terrible question.
My answer, start. Pick a place. Just start. How do I become a writer? Do you write things? That's a good first step. Those are terrible questions, guys. Just ask, learn that's and it's a terrible question because it's unproductive. There's no real answer that I can give you that's actually going to give you the clarity that you need to get unstuck and moving forward. At least not any more clarity than you would get if you actually just picked a spot and started and learned what you could learn and kept moving. So don't ask questions like that.
I think the other mistake people ask is they don't even know what they want. Because notice what you just asked me. How do I get started writing? I don't know. You could get started writing today. Like go on Reddit. I don't know. Like do
what
whatever.
Kind of writing do you want to do? Do you want to write plays? Do you want to write poetry? Like there's a million different kinds of writing that you could do.
And do you want to make money with it? And if so, how? Like, but I think that's also part of the trick of moving up in the world personally and professionally. Knowing what you want is a superpower, and there is no training for it. In fact, we actually get punished for it growing up.
Mm-hmm.
We do not, if you had parents or school teachers who encouraged you to know what Marcus Aurelius called knowing the color of your own soul, and knowing what you want and going after it, you were very lucky.
Yes.
Because most people don't get that.
Yeah. I had to be the one to prove that you could make a career out of writing and not be a starving artist. That I had to be the one that proved that to my family. So.
I was forbidden from going to art school. I was forbidden. My dream at 17 was to become an animator at Disney or Pixar. And my mom was like, absolutely not. You have to go get a real job. And, I love my career. I love where I ended up. And I'm not saying I wouldn't have enjoyed being an animator working at Disney or Pixar. I'm saying, I don't think there's any one perfect dream career. And that's it. Just like, I don't know if there's any, like, is there one true love? Like that's a whole philosophical thing. There's many different paths for all of us and many of them can work.
Oh yeah. And dreams change and evolve over time. Like, yeah, I saw that in a copywriting forum earlier today where someone was like, for once and for all, I need to pick a direction and specialize in it. And I was like, I'm going to lovingly challenge you on once and for all. Yeah. I do agree that you need to pick one, but just know that I've gone through like half a dozen evolutions over the course of my copywriting career, including the time when I decided I don't think I want to be a copywriter anymore.
And it's interesting you say that because most copywriters I know, including myself, once we get the experience under our belts, we stop thinking of ourselves first and foremost as copywriters. Mm-hmm. The natural progression of a copywriter, and nobody mentions this at the beginning of your career, but the natural progression is that at some point you will evolve out of copywriting.
Yes.
Copywriting is a skill set. It's not your identity.
Exactly.
It's just one superpower in your tool belt.
Mm-hmm. And I want to unpack that a little bit. Because again, if you're new to the podcast and you're not sure what I'm saying about copywriting, it's a little bit, it's Mad Men if you've ever seen it, but we're basically marketing and sales writers, right? And among
not as much drinking as Mad Men.
Yeah, not as much drinking. Although I did have an ex once when somebody at his work asked what I did, and he said copywriter, and they were like, "Oh, like Mad Men? Is she like Peggy Olson?" And he's like, "No, she's like Don Draper, sex, drinking, and lots of naps." And I was like, I like that. I can own that. Less shitty treatment of the people around me, but I can handle that identity. So we're sales writers, which the interesting thing about that and the creative art that we're in is like, we're the strategic people, right? We can see how a business operates and translate that into messaging and creativity, which I think is a fantastic skill, which naturally leads to, I've been working with a business owner for a while, and I know how to sell the crap out of everything that they produce. Why don't I just create things and sell them for myself? Yeah. Like that happens to more copywriters than, and I know that at the beginning stages of my career, when somebody mentored me and they were like, look, there's plenty of space for other copywriters to step up into their own and grow because people are moving up and out all the time. And I did not believe them when they said it until I hit that and was like, yeah.
Oh, I didn't either.
You can hear, you have this job, you have that job. I don't want it anymore.
I can tell what stage someone is at in their career, at least in our industry, because one of the most popular bad questions I get is, do you worry about competition? And I'm like, with who? Mm-hmm. And with other copywriters, there's so much business out there. And like, I can tell you as someone who's now getting into a position where I'm helping with hiring, from behind the table, it is so hard to find good people. Yeah. I mean, there are not enough copywriters to go around. And I think that's true in any industry, no matter what your job title is. If you're good at what you are, if you are what Seth Godin calls a linchpin, that person in an organization that is irreplaceable, you will never lack for work.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you say like, there's not enough copywriters to go. There's plenty of copywriters. There's plenty of creatives, but they're not good. And that sounds like a judgment, but that's not my intention to judge you if you're not good. But when I coach a lot of people and I tell them, like, you're in the top 10% easily if you show up when you said you would, having done what you said you'd do.
Yeah.
So many people can't even manage that. They'll commit to a deadline and then they'll blow it. They'll say, I'm an excellent writer, and then they turn in a crap draft. Like, that's who you're competing against. You're not competing against Angie or Carolyn. You're competing against those guys. And that's an easy win if you just show up and do good work.
Yeah. And also, not to beat a dead horse,
yes,
but if you know how to ask good questions, I am constantly harping on this with a writer that I mentor. You know, a lot of what I do when I'm reviewing his work isn't even nitty gritty line by line copy stuff. I'm constantly leaving comments for him in the document going, okay, where's your mindset when you wrote this? Why are you starting here? What's the product? Who's the prospect reading it? What user experience have they already had? And what's their state of mind? Are they happy? Are they frustrated? Are you upselling them because they've been a happy customer for a while, or are they brand new? That's like retention. Selling someone on the back end, retaining a happy customer is a totally different kettle of fish from marketing at the front of the house when you're welcoming someone in the front door.
I think that's good news for anybody that's in business too, whether you're in copywriting or marketing or not. Like, understanding the difference between keeping a happy customer and attracting a brand new customer.
Yeah.
That's two totally different, with some overlap, audiences, and you got to talk to them differently.
Yeah. And if you take that, because you might have people listening to this interview who aren't in marketing and might be like, well, how does this, affect me? Everything in life comes down to knowing how to ask good questions. And that really comes down to having radical empathy.
Love it, love it, love it. Actually had somebody on the show recently who calls herself an empathy educator. And I really loved the way I love the way that she framed it, because she said empathy isn't emotional. It's a skill. It's a learned skill. And it comes from, like you said, asking the right questions and then listening to understand.
Yeah.
Versus listening to counter.
Yes. For me, it's also, it's listening without emotion. And it's almost like, if you do it right, you're almost in a hall of mirrors.
Interesting. Tell me more about that.
What I mean by it is it's almost like mind reading, and you can only read another person's mind to the extent that you know yourself, which is where therapy is very helpful. I'm from Jersey, and I've cracked jokes with you before that people in Jersey think you're crazy if you don't have a shrink. No, it's true. Because look, man, the world's a tough place, and none of us are 100% 100% adjusted. So just going to talk to someone is really helpful from a health standpoint. But good therapy is like entering a hall of mirrors, because you get a chance to see yourself without any judgments. And you get a chance to clean up your inner mess. Because if your inner world is noisy, you will struggle to see the world around you accurately. Yeah. And you definitely will not understand other people personally or professionally. If you have a clean, inner world, that is a superpower, especially if you work in marketing and you need to have deep empathy of other people. You need to be able to understand what questions you should be asking.
I love that, because I think that speaks in an indirect way to this concept of projection, right? I deal with that a lot with people that I coach too, especially when it comes to pricing their work. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I can't increase my proposal by $75. They're going to think I'm charging out. I was like, first of all, $75 is drinks at the bar for a lot of business owners. And that's it's a business expense. They don't see it the way that you're seeing it. And what I'm seeing from the outside is you projecting your ideas about what other people can afford onto this proposal. Don't spend other people's money, baby doll. Don't do it. You have no idea what's in their wallet.
I heard a great description once related to this. Someone said, if you have unresolved demons in your mind, you'll see them everywhere, even where they do not exist. And that is so true.
Yeah. I was talking to another writer earlier today that was like, I really want this job. Should I offer a half price discount? And I was like, oh, let's do this again. And if you're listening, I love you. Again, it's no judgments, but my first and foremost priority as a business owner is not the amount of money that I'm paying. It's relevant. And I am definitely going to look at that in terms of the big picture and what I'm getting back. But no, don't default to cut the price. And that's the most attractive thing. The most attractive thing is somebody that I can rely on that shows up and does good work when they said that they would do it. Are you noticing a theme here? And I feel like we're repeating this episode a lot, but there's some things
we're beating it into people's heads so they understand. The beatings around here will continue until morale improves.
And this is relevant to more than just writing. Anybody that has a business, your client at the end of the day wants to know that the money that they paid is going towards someone who shows up when they said they would, having done what they said they'd do. That's the nature of this business. Really, really, truly.
The other thing I think about too is if you really understand what someone wants, someone who is looking for talent and who sees the big picture and they want your help, for example, bringing in millions of dollars of extra revenue. If you negotiate with them, they actually respect you more. And I have had this happen to me where I have negotiated. I've just stated my case and then shut the hell up.
Yes.
And I have quoted big numbers and I have had people come back to me and they're suddenly much warmer. Like they're really like, I impressed them and they were like,
look, if you're setting Dollar General prices, there's a certain expectation with Dollar General quality.
Right.
And if you are setting Neiman Marcus prices, let's just keep with this shopping analogy here, this retailer analogy.
I like it.
There's a certain other expectation that comes with that pricing and that service level. And you get to choose which one of those you want to be. But don't go getting pissed off at your clients if you set Dollar General prices and they come back and they treat you like a bargain basement person. You made that decision to set yourself at that level.
I think the caveat to that, and I agree with what you're saying, but there's a follow-up too there that's very important that I don't think gets discussed enough. At the end of the day, you cannot change another person.
Yeah.
So if you try and they're just not receptive, and it's really not you really tried your best, you may just be asking the wrong person.
Yes.
And it's good to walk away from bad fits. And that's also why you can't have a poverty mentality. There's always more tables.
Yep.
I use that analogy because I used to be a waitress and a bartender, and you learn fast in hospitality. If you fuck up with one table, are we allowed to curse on this?
Yes. It's permission to kick ass.
Okay, great. If in hospitality, if you screw up one table or if a table's just bad, look, there's going to be another one behind it in 15 minutes. So it's not worth getting upset over it.
Get your head on straight and then just get to work on the next one. It's fantastic. And that brings up a great point too, because I think that's where, exactly like you said, a lot of people get messed up in the head about pricing and deals and things like that, because you are setting your prices at Neiman Marcus and talking to people who shop at Dollar General. They are never going to understand the value of Neiman Marcus. I don't know. Did they have personal shopper? Clearly, I don't shop at Neiman Marcus, but the whole expectation is different, and they are fine with the quality and the service that they get at Dollar General. You're not going to change that person into suddenly being the spendier shopper, but you can go find a spendier shopper who understands the value of Neiman Marcus.
And I think that's where it's also really critical that you understand your own mind. And you clean up your own inner world, because you will only see to the extent that you're capable of seeing. And that's also why it's important to surround yourself with good people, because bad relationship investments are actually a drain on your time. And there's a hidden cost or a not so hidden cost, because if you spend your time on bad fits, it will start to drain you and it will start to mess with your head. I really didn't understand how far I could go in my career until I found a great mentor who, our first day together, he sat me down and talked to me one-on-one for 5 hours. Oh, wow. This is a guy who you can't get in the door with him. If you did, you'd probably have to spend thousands of dollars an hour for the privilege of his time. And he said to me a lot of things that blew my mind. But one of the things that really stood out to me was he asked me, what's your big dream? Because if you want to be a copywriter, if being a copywriter is your big dream, you are thinking way too small. You should be thinking about owning companies.
Yes.
And that blew my mind. He was like, you should be thinking about being a CEO one day, or being part of, being an executive. And that really changed my perspective on a lot of things. But until that point, I had suspicions about things like that. But it was the first time in my career that another copywriter, who obviously didn't identify as a copywriter anymore, sat down with me and gave me the straight scoop on life.
Oh, yeah.
And what was possible.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier having money stories. So I want to dig into that a little bit more too. Yeah. Because it's no secret that I grew up poor in rural Texas, the eldest of 3 children of a single mom. And, I think you and I were the ones that talked about this too. Like, mac and cheese and hot dogs were my comfort food. I, in that mindset, in that framing, am never going to understand why someone would pay to take a private jet.
Yeah.
Whereas I've grown and I've increased the revenue of my company, and I've started to, like you said, run in circles with other people that show me what's possible. I've invested up in relationships with people from drastically different backgrounds, wealth, people who've worked their way out of poverty like me. And they've shown me what's possible. And I've come to understand why someone would take a private jet, because it's going to take me 8 hours to get through airport security, because I'm going to have to deal with all this aggravation of TSA and inspection and stuff like that. I'm going to have to sit in a crowded lounge, buy food from an incredibly long airport line. Whereas I can save a lot of that time by just spending more upfront and driving straight onto the tarmac, hopping onto that jet, not having to deal with a whole lot of people. It sounds privileged the way that I'm describing it, but it's really a trade-off. What I'm talking about. I've said it before, but I think it bears repeating. You're going to spend one way or another, and you have to decide whether you want to spend time or money.
Right.
And at a certain point in business, you start to understand that time is the thing that's more valuable. You can always make more money, right? But you can't create more time. And that's why you see a lot of people at the higher end of business spending an inordinate amount of money on things that save them time, that make their process that much faster, that shave minutes or eliminate extra tasks and improve efficiency. Oh, I could rant about that forever.
It's funny you bring up time, because that ties into leverage, which we mentioned at the beginning of this talk, which we still haven't dug super far into. But I want to bring up time related to that, because one of the biggest mistakes people make at the beginning of their career, or even middle of their career, just in general, people waste too much time trying to figure out what they want and never stop to ask themselves, A, why haven't I already started? And B, giving themselves permission to make mistakes. Yes. Just start, and then you can always change your mind. Because, quite frankly, if you, what you just said about spending, trade-offs, spending money at the beginning of my career, even a few years ago, I didn't have the money for a private jet, even if I wanted it. So a better use of your time is to frankly ask yourself, what do I have right now? What assets do I have? If you don't have money, you do have time. And I would tell people, invest that in an apprenticeship.
Yep.
Because that's how you get in the door with VIP people who can help you with your mindset and move up in your career. And that's how you get leverage. And that's how you start calling the shots.
I like that you use that word invest specifically in regards to time, because especially in entrepreneurship in the early stages, there's this resistance to investing in ourselves. Yeah. It kind of feels like, once I earn the money or once I hit a certain level, I've earned the right to invest in myself. And then there's kind of another extreme to that, where it's people spend so much time investing in themselves that they never actually do the damn work. Yeah. There has to be a healthy balance between the two of those. You can't invest everything in yourself and never take any action on it. And you can't avoid investing in yourself if you hope to get to the levels and you can have whatever you want. No excuses, no justification. You have to set your sight on it though, and figure out how to get there step by step.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love
that's
that.
That's actually a reason that maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but I actually think most people go into entrepreneurship too early. And I think there are significant benefits to having a day job because you create a stable foundation on which to build your reputation, your personal brand, your skill set, your network. When you have that foundation, you get a sense of, I don't want to say luxury, but you have a sense of how things should be.
Mm-hmm.
I've been poor. It's really hard to move up in the world and scale when you can't pay bills or you're very stingy about spending on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or like you have to take the next client that comes along because otherwise you're going to go hungry. Like I totally understand that pressure.
Yeah. So a foundation is not a bad thing. And in fact, I encourage it.
Yeah. I said, Chris Orzakowski. And we worked together in-house at a company for a while before each of us went on our own freelance. And we've long said that to younger copywriters, like what's missing here is your understanding of business. Like you get the creative side, you get the idea generation side, but you're not understanding the business context in which your skills get applied. And so like, look, copywriters, if you're listening, you are not the most important piece of the puzzle. You're just not. There are so many other things. Like you can be the cherry on top that makes this whole thing extra sweet, but you are definitely not that. Like get your ego out of this game. It's good to have a little bit of a healthy ego and know what you bring to the table, but don't be so egotastic that everybody is like, you can't fit in the same room with your own freaking giant head. I can't stand that. Like, I don't know where I was going with that.
I think a lot of people go into entrepreneurship you can go in for the right reasons and you can go in for the wrong reasons. And I think a lot of people go in for the wrong reasons. And one being they're trying to run away from something instead of run towards something. Ooh, and the other is people mistake the mechanism for the end goal. And what I mean by that is we've developed this culture, especially in North America, about, being hashtag girl boss or, be my own boss.
Sorry,
CEO.
I hate that.
Anytime you see like a bullshit photo on social media of somebody standing in front of a boat that, isn't even theirs. And they're like, hashtag blessed, hashtag abundance. And you're like, great. That doesn't help me.
Yeah.
But this is the idea. Like there's this fantasy about what being an entrepreneur is. And honestly, the most successful entrepreneurs I've met aren't famous. They put in the work for years at a corporate job and then went off on their own. Basically, a lot of people think being their own boss will solve all their problems. And my counter to that is, well, will it really? I mean,
it just creates new problems.
It just creates, you just inherit new ones. Like at the end of the day, what do you really want? What really matters to you? Is it the money? Is it inventing something fabulous that will change the world? I mean, just be honest with yourself.
Yeah. And don't judge it because, hey, spoiler alert, if you didn't already get the message, life is problems. All of life, problems every day until you die. Sorry.
And you 100%, as you move up the ladder, inherit new ones.
Yes. But the idea here is to exchange shitty problems for better and better problems, easier problems, or problems that are more interesting for you to solve, or problems that you can completely just outsource to somebody else.
And hopefully more money. Because if you're not making more money as you progress in your career, you're doing something wrong.
Well, money is the interesting sticking point too, because we know in our industry, there's a magic number, right? 100,000 a year, 10,000 a month.
Oh,
woohoo, magic. You're rolling in the money. And then I have to burst some people's bubbles. But I'm like, 100,000 isn't that much money in a business context. It's a lot of money. It's life-changing money for some folks. But in a business context, it's not a whole lot. And I'll tell you why. Because once you get to that level, you need help and you can't really handle a lot on your own. So what I'm talking about is like expanding beyond, I take care of the books and I take care of all of the calendar and appointment setting and the back and forth with the clients. At some point, something's got to give so that you can focus on the work that actually generates money. And now that $100,000 is starting to be spent on other people to free up your time. So in other words, it's being invested back into your business. So once you get to these levels, you immediately find out that it's not what you thought. And then the learning and the problems begin all over again.
Which is why I think it's so important that you know what you want going in.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, you have permission to change what you want.
Yes.
Over time.
Yes. You can change your mind and you can change it back. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's
like when I came in the door at Money Map Press, I mean, I started on the back end doing retention. And in our industry, everybody's dream, the dream of every financial copywriter is to move up and do promo, which to anyone listening who's not a copywriter, it's doing full scale marketing campaigns. Everybody wants to do it. It's the mark of, you've made it when you're writing promo.
Yeah. Those are the ones where you command the big old fees and maybe even the royalties and
But I came in the door and I was still a fairly green copywriter, and I started writing retention. So I was writing to customers who had been on the file a while and upselling them, cross-selling them. And it was an amazing experience. And quite frankly, it was also desperately needed. You need that. You need somebody keeping your customers happy and upselling them and cross-selling them and all that. And then I moved to the front of the house where I started doing acquisition, which means getting new customers in the door. Very, very different style of marketing. Hey, you know what? It's all desperately needed. And they're skills that come in handy no matter where you are in your career. So I know it's going to come in handy for me down the road. So, I came in the door thinking, hey, I'm going to do promo soon. And, I went in a different direction because it's just where life took me, and that's fine.
Well, I love that story though, because you said yes to an opportunity that most people might thumb their noses at, or, that's not where I want to go. So I'm just going to ignore that entirely. And I know that recently we talked privately about how that's made you a linchpin within the company. Like you said, you were talking about earlier, you are probably the only, or like one of a very, very tiny group who has the skill set that you do, which makes you incredibly valuable.
I'm the only person right now who, actually, that's not true. There's I think there's two people, me and one other person at the company right now who has done renewals and understands retention. And then I'm the only copywriter doing acquisitions right now. So yeah, and it's critical because if you don't have people coming in the door, then you don't have eyeballs on your big promos. So,
but what I love about this is, you don't have eyeballs on the big promos. How that ties into understanding your own value and your own worth. Because I think it would be easy for somebody that's, they've got the blinders on and they're just focused on promo, right, to ignore all of this other stuff. And then, like you said, ignore the fact that without acquisition, they don't have eyeballs on their promo. But you being in your position, you can actually see up toward these promo people. Like there's dozens, if not hundreds of people competing for that. And you're here being kind of the foundation of what makes the money. And you're damn near irreplaceable at this point with your skill set.
Yeah. And it's a skill I wanted, frankly, because this is true of any career, I think, but it's especially true of copywriters. Nobody's teaching you. Like you build your own career. Dream jobs are not found. They're consciously built over time if you do it right.
Yep. So
I know, by the time I start doing promo, there are certain skills that I want to have in place that can help me move up the ladder. And that comes into leverage, which we're mentioning now for the third time. So let's talk about leverage. Leverage means leverage opens all doors to you. It's like a skeleton key. Tactics don't work if you don't have leverage. I think a lot of people obsess over tactics, and you see a lot of that on Quora, on Reddit. People always want a nice, juicy BuzzFeed type clickbait bit of advice that doesn't honestly work because you don't have leverage. leverage means
there's no magic button, but about as close as you can get to a magic button is having leverage.
Yeah, it means having options. It's another word for power, which is a dirty word. And there's a reason I try not to use it because people have really strong reactions against it. I was once a guest speaker at my college, and I was giving them advice on, career development and how to move up in the world. And when I mentioned the word power, up until that point, they had been leaning in and were like really curious. But as soon as I said the word power, I guess they were all poli-sci students and had just finished studying Machiavelli, because they reacted as if I just killed a puppy in front of them. They were so turned off. And I was like, listen, guys, power is not a bad thing. It's what you do with it. I think it's sad that people have such a negative reaction to it. So I use the word leverage now because it sounds nicer, but
it's the same with money. Like the connotation that you associate with it isn't necessarily the reality. It's what you do with it, what you choose to do with it. Having money doesn't make you a bad person. Having power doesn't make you a bad person. The choices you make are what make you a good or bad person.
Yeah. And one of the ways you get leverage, I mean, that's worked for me. One, like we just discussed about the skills I've chosen, pick skills that are both valuable and rare and make you hard to replace, what Seth Godin calls the linchpin. And then the other thing too is have a network.
Yep.
I think too many people only think of their network when they need to extract something from it.
Yeah.
And if you're that person, believe me, the people around you know. I think part of the reasons I've been successful is because I've always focused on my friendships first, and I have for years. And the fruits of that always came second. Like I was always curious to meet people and connect with them. And then I didn't have an agenda going in. I was just like, oh, you seem cool. Let's get to know each other. And that doesn't sound like a salient point, but it really is. Because if you go into networking with an agenda, it's not going to be fruitful. It just isn't.
Yeah.
I can tell when someone's going in with an agenda versus bonding just as people.
Yeah. It's kind of that instinctive, like, what do you want from me? Okay. Oh, okay. What do you want? I know that you're reaching out.
Yeah. I've had a few of those too. And those relationships never last. There's something magical that comes out of genuine human connection with people where you just genuinely like and respect each other. And you can just sit around and, bullshit over brunch and come up with ideas.
Oh, I love that. I think this, you know what? There was something else that we mentioned right before we started recording that I thought was really awesome. And this concept of, we don't know if we invented this word or not, but we're gonna claim it, at least for now, until someone contradicts us. This idea of being an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Somebody that's like a business owner, an entrepreneur, and brings that skill set in-house to a job or a role or a long-term thing. Let's dive into that some more.
Yeah. Where do you want to start?
I don't know where I was going with that either, but I mean, I know that you technically fit that descriptor in your role because you are an employee with this corporation, with this company, but you really love the work that you do. And instead of being an order taker, you are a problem solver, which I really love. I think this, like, entrepreneur skills are valuable in any context because you're a problem solver and people need that every day. Because, hey, tying back to the beginning, problems every day of your entire life, forever.
People need problem solvers. They just don't always know it. And sometimes they resent it. I'm fortunate in that I work for a company that appreciates an entrepreneurial, proactive, get it done mindset. So if I see something broken, I'm just like, well, all right, I'm going to come up with a solution. I'll let you know what I come up with.
I think that's important too, because I was always a problem spotter when I was in my old day job role, but I wasn't instinctively a problem solver. And it wasn't until one of my mentors pointed out to me, he was like, hey, you're really good at like seeing 6 months down and figuring out where the problems are. You're not really good at figuring out how to head them off, though. I would love, and I love the way that he always taught me like this. I would love if next time you spot a problem like this, you also brought me a solution or two. And I was like, oh, shit. Yeah.
Did you?
I got better at that from that point. But you talked about investing in yourself and having mentorship earlier. And I think that that's important too. Like without him showing me, like just pointing out problems is basically just bitching. Well, if we don't fix that, this thing is going to happen and it's going to be horrible for us all. Like, well, this could be a problem, but here's a couple of ways that we could take this on that might minimize that is a totally different approach.
How valuable was that experience to you?
Oh, invaluable. And I think I text him probably a couple times a year and I'm like, here's this time that you brought me into the office and you were like, Angie, could you sit down? Could you shut the door, please? And we had one of those talks that I recalled when I was speaking with somebody that I'm mentoring. And I'm like, all right, oh God, I see young Angie in so many ways. And I appreciate how difficult it was for him to have this conversation with me because now I got to have it with someone else.
That's so valuable. And I think that's what the whole concept of intrapreneur versus entrepreneur. Again, for me, it comes back to the mechanism. At the end of the day, where you work, what do you really want? Do you really want to run your own company? If so, why?
Yeah.
See, for me, it's never been entrepreneurship is itself a mechanism. I can tell you what matters to me. My relationships matter to me. Money matters to me. And I can even go deeper with that. The reason money matters to me is because to me, it represents stability and security.
Yep.
And that's like, I love having options. I love not having to worry about things. If something ever happens, it's taken care of. I can take care of the people I care about. I don't have to, so many things become easier when you have money. So I know what the things that I value. And I'm not yet at a place in my career where entrepreneurship would help me get that. So I might as well be in-house and do great work.
Well, and that's, that brings me to an interesting point too, because I know when we set this one up, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but like behind the scenes as we were getting ready for this,
cut it.
Yeah, you brought up this, like, it might be a little bit of anxiety. You were like, should I be on the show if I have a job? And I was like, absolutely. Because I don't want to be one of those people that says entrepreneurship looks like this. And you have to meet these milestones to be like, my mom fought against me on that too. When I had her on the show, she was like, I'm not ready. I haven't reached this certain level. And I was like, but you have something to teach and you have something to learn and your experience is valid. And I absolutely want to speak to entrepreneurs at all levels. Like, no offense to all the podcast hosts out there that go straight for the top. That's a valid strategy too. And I'm not saying that Carolyn is not at the top, but I didn't want that for this show. I wanted to speak to people and hear about genuine experiences. And I wanted to hear from different perspectives and different stages. And to me, that was the important conversation to have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that you came on for episode 2 because absolutely you come on this show. Absolutely.
Hell yeah. We're not done, are we?
No.
Okay, cool.
Keep going.
Yeah.
This is what I love about this show too. This is how you know it's real. Like you can't see this video, of course, because I'm not releasing it, but she and I are staring at each other like, all right, you go, am I go? Who, what? Are we?
Maybe we should cut this part. This doesn't sound professional.
I don't give a damn what sounds professional.
That's right. We're cursing on here. It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, at the end of the day, I really don't care about entrepreneurship. It's just a mechanism. What's your end goal?
I think that's a great way to look at it too, because we can get wrapped up in these identities and like what an entrepreneur looks like. And I don't look, then there's the comparison trap. I don't look like that. So am I an entrepreneur? Then the judgment kicks in. Then you start to get the temptation to quit. Like just use it for the tool it is. Entrepreneurship is a tool. Problem solving is a tool. Leverage is a tool. All of these things that we're talking about today are tools. Yeah.
Negotiation, priorities. And by the way, priorities, plural, fun fact, do not exist literally by definition, because the word priority comes from the Latin word prioritas, I think, and it means for the one thing, first in rank. So the concept of priorities as a plural doesn't exist. That's a bastardization we've created in America because we're constantly inundated with competing activities and a lot of white noise. and societal pressures. And we're just inundated with distractions and often don't even know what we really want. And it's honestly crazy how little we know what we really want. So we tend to mask our own desires with mechanisms.
Yep. Or we convince ourselves that what society or what other people around us that we care for want for us is the thing that we want. And we talk ourselves down out of what we actually want because it's too ridiculous or it's too out there or it's too much or like, I don't know. I wasted so much time talking myself out of, but I can't be a podcast host because XYZ, but I can't write a book because of XYZ. Bullshit. I can do all of those things.
Yeah.
And I recognize,
like, why do you really want all that stuff? Like a lot of people, they come down to, well, I just want more money. Do you know how much my mind was blown when my therapist asked me, how much do you want to make every year? And I gave her a number and she said, why? Do you know how taken aback I was by that? Because I was like, I don't know. Like I used to be poor, more money, the merrier. And she's like, but what do you like? Why? What do you plan to spend this money on? And I had to think about it.
Yeah.
And actually think about what really matters to me.
I know I've had that conversation in relation to this podcast before too, because, you know, like I mentioned that I'm in copywriting groups, but I'm also in podcaster groups because obviously I'm interested in that. And there's the conversation a lot about like, what's the end game? What do you plan to do with this? Like, how are you going to leverage this into more? And my answer for permission to kick ass is, I don't fucking know. I'm just enjoying having the conversations right now. I'm sure that something will come of it eventually, but for right now, it's about the people that I'm meeting and the conversations that I'm having. And every once in a while, somebody will write in and go, oh my God, that episode. I needed to hear that today. That's what I'm doing this show for. Those people out there that needed this message today.
And that's a great reason. And even just because it's fun. Fun is a good reason too. Like, who gives a shit? Do you enjoy it?
Blast. Oh my God.
That's a good reason.
You know, Brian McCarthy, we've hung out together and he's my life coach, but he helped me realize when I was afraid to launch the podcast a whole year ago now, as we're recording this, that when it came to recording day, if I didn't let the fear speak up and talk me into canceling something, suddenly my energy was back because I was just having so much fun with these people. And like, oh my God, you're blowing my mind with this thing that you said. It's so genius. We're having fun. That like leveraging the fun, we're back to leverage again, really helped me kind of leapfrog over the fear and keep that end goal in sight. So like fun is a valid reason to do things. I like doing it is a valid reason to do things.
I bet it also helps with emotional constipation. Because people make a face whenever I bring that. Like, I don't know if I invented that phrase, but it's there's that book by Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, and he talks about resistance.
Yep.
Resistance is just emotional constipation. It's procrastination. It's distractions. It's, I should start, but excuse. You know, you can tell when you're in the grips of resistance because you feel rigid. Even your emotions feel rigid, and you have another excuse. But like you can feel like I can tell when I'm in resistance because I feel it in my body. I feel it in my mind. One of the nice things about working at a publishing house is you have deadlines like every day. So I've gotten really good at losing my fear of the blank page. Yep. You just write shit. Some of it doesn't work. Yep. Who cares?
I like that you said that. And I want to highlight that. And, you know, if we can make that into a Nike-esque slogan, just write shit. It's okay that you write shit. And Lamott calls it the shitty first draft.
Yeah.
The great news about creation is that nobody has to see the first draft except you. So there's nobody judging the first draft except you, unless you are out there purposefully. And I don't know why anybody would do this, but if you're the kind that's out there showing your first draft to the world, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. You can actually show people the finished product after you got rid of all of the shitty first draft.
Especially, and if you want to move up the ladder, the key thing is having a senior person review your work constantly. Because that's the thing a lot of people miss. They focus on time as a measure of growth. And time by itself is a bullshit metric.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean you're improving or moving up the ladder. And you'll know that because if years go by and you're still in the same place and, you can like your skills have not improved, you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I would ask is, are you having your work reviewed by a senior person who's actually successful and knows what they're doing and giving you feedback? You
have to build in, if you want to get better, like, look, it's valid to stay where you are in your comfort zone. I'm going to challenge you to maybe step past it and give yourself some credit because you could probably do more than you think that you can. But the key to moving up, if you're ready to move up, is getting outside of your head and learning skills that you don't yet possess. Because if you could just do it on your own, hey, we would all be off to the races. But everybody needs feedback and criticism to get better. So stop avoiding it. Embrace it. Criticism is your friend.
It's the only way to move forward. There's no good courses out there for a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's especially the mindset of VIPs.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people, especially in discussions on Twitter and other online watering holes for personal development, people talk about mindset. There's no good courses out there on mindset. It's very hard to teach mindset in a structured, modular way like you would find in a course. That is something you typically learn by watching and interacting with experts or reading a lot of books.
Reading a lot of books. Yep.
Biographies of famous, successful people. If you're lucky,
even like our mutual mentor, Kevin Rogers, recommended the book, the literal book Mindset to me. And I was like, oh shit, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I need to adjust my mindset.
How was the book? Was it good?
It's a pretty quick read. I think it's been years since I've read it, so I don't remember much, but I do remember reading. So she talks about the two types of mindset. She calls them fixed and growth mindset. And I remember reading the fixed mindset and going, that was where I had that reaction of, oh, fuck, this is me. This is how I think. I understand what my mentor is trying to say to me now, because like thinking in these rigid patterns, shifting blame off yourself in a self-protective way. And this is like me just recalling from years ago. I don't know how accurate this is. This is me paraphrasing it, but like that shutting down instead of seeking solutions, the closed-mindedness, that was all stuff that was like my second nature. And when I read this book, I was like, ooh, okay, I'm here and I want to be there. What are the changes that I need to make now to how I'm thinking about these problems in order to even open up the path to get to there?
Yeah.
And it's been a journey because I haven't always been open-minded. I have historically been super judgy, very not empathetic at all. But all of these skills, like I said, the past guest that said empathy is a skill, not an emotion. You can absolutely develop all of these things, seeking out feedback from people that, and I like that. I want to underline that a little bit. Seeking out feedback, but from people who know what they're doing.
Yes.
Not internet trolls.
No bullshit artists. And you have to be careful because bullshit artists talk a good game.
Ooh.
And there's a lot of them out there. So you know how to differentiate a bullshit artist from a true expert, right?
No. Tell me.
Okay. True experts offer actionable, tangible advice. Mm-hmm. Not vague platitudes. Hashtag blessed. I can read stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, that's bullshit.
Sign up for my emails to get my best tips and tricks. And every single email is just a sales pitch with no actual tips or tricks.
Every single email is just a rags to riches story. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, well, but how?
Sign up for my free emails and get all my tips and tricks. But all of the tips and tricks are paid products. I will not give you any of them. You will buy them.
That's the trick.
That's the trick. Watch how I tricked you.
Did I ever tell you how I got in the door with the Silicon Valley VC?
No.
He's one of my mentors. I got in the door with this guy. So a couple of years ago, I was earlier in my career and I had an inkling about the whole mindset thing. Mm-hmm. I knew that the trick to moving up in the world and not just moving up in the world, but finding more pleasure in the things I did and finding work that was truly meaningful to me was hanging out with real experts. Mm-hmm. And I saw this guy giving an interview and I was immediately struck by his thought process. I could tell by the way he answered questions for a sign, right? Like knowing how to ask good questions is the sign of a very smart person. another sign is someone who gives good answers.
Mm-hmm.
So I could tell by the interview, wow, this guy is really smart, like really emotionally intelligent. And it didn't hurt that he also went to Stanford, and like, he's really smart and successful, but he knows his shit. I can tell by the way he answers these questions. And I thought, wow, I would love to learn from this guy. I don't know how, but just hanging out with him, I think I would learn a lot. So I asked around in my network, and what do you know? Someone that I knew him.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked her, I said, can I reach out to him and use your name? And she said, yeah, go for it. So I did. And he was very gracious. He wrote me back right away. And he said, I might be persuaded to coach you. Just answer for me this question. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm most interested to hear what's been the biggest influence on your life? What's made you the person you are today?
Ooh.
And I can't share the email that I wrote him back, but it was a work of art. It was every word earned its way onto the page. And because I knew enough about this guy, because I'd done my research on him, I'd seen I've watched all his other interviews. I read about his story. I talked about my dad, and how my dad, the things my father taught me growing up, including, I started working young. I started working at 11. I went to work with my father. And my dad also raised me via the Socratic method, which meant my dad, I was so angry at him for this when I was growing up, because I thought he was trying to piss me off. My dad was constantly asking me questions, and I didn't realize at the time that he was forcing me to learn how to think for myself. And I asked my dad that recently as an adult, why he did that. And he was smart. He said, because I knew kids and teenagers in particular think they know everything. If I told you what to do, you would have ignored me. So, and then done it anyway. So I wanted you to think for yourself and learn how to come to your own conclusions. And it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad forced me to learn how to think and ask good questions. And I didn't realize until my 20s, and I started reading the Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, that was literally what my dad was doing, teaching me how to think and how to ask good questions. So I told this venture capitalist my story, and he wrote me back and he said, all right, I'll teach you. By the way, my fee is $500 an hour. And I happily paid it. And I spent the next, year just meeting him for, once a month. And we just talked. And I learned so much just by talking to him and seeing how he thought. Mm-hmm. And I was struck by the fact, like you said, empathy is not an emotion. On the surface, this guy was very methodical and had an engineer's mind. He almost reminded me a bit of Spock from Star Trek. And yet he was so emotionally intelligent. And what I realized was, it's not like he had no emotions like Spock. He had emotions, but they did not rule him. Yes. He was emotionally intelligent and in control of his actions. And one of the things I learned from him was, in terms of making hard decisions in life and in business, nothing is personal. And it comes down to, when you're at a crossroads, asking yourself, well, what are the potential effects of my decision, either A or B? And then it becomes obvious. And I really learned from watching him not to sweat the small stuff.
Yep. I love that you brought that up. The whole concept of it's just business, it's not personal. And I know there are some people that disagree with me out there, because business itself can be a personal thing. But by the same token, I love permission to kick ass. I love everything I've built it into. And at the end of the day, as the person who runs the business, I've got to make decisions based on budget, based on time, based on resources, based on there's a lot of decisions, a lot of factors that go into any given decision. And so if I make a decision to go with this vendor versus that vendor, it's not personal. It's not because I like them or I think they're a better person. I've evaluated them against all of my I was going to say priorities against
which don't exist.
Yes, which don't exist. I evaluated them against all of the things that I'm trying to achieve, all of the things that I've got available to me, and evaluated them as the person that I think is best able to help me right now. That doesn't mean I think the other person is shitty. I don't think they're second best. I don't think they're a horrible provider. It just means that they got edged out by this person that meets my needs a little bit more. That to me is the definition of it's business. It's not personal.
And it also comes back to our earlier conversation about therapy and cleaning up your own inner world.
Yep.
So you see clearly. Nothing is personal. Seriously, nothing.
Well, and the funny thing is that this happens more often than most people would realize, I think, is so if I'm vendor B that just got passed over for vendor A, and I don't lose my shit, if something happens to vendor A and they can't fulfill, guess who's next in line?
Yep.
Me. Yep. Unless I did something to shoot myself in the foot and become an asshole. Like, I'm the next one up. So don't let your ego get in the way and trash potential relationships because you took that decision, that business decision personally, and then lashed out. No.
Trashing relationships or even putting them in jeopardy is never worth it. It's not. It's just not.
Yeah. Even if we made each other miserable working together, I'm never going to talk shit about somebody that I worked with, that I parted ways with, because you never, this is the way that I put it. The toes that you step on today may be connected to the ass that you need to kiss tomorrow. Don't step on the toes. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. And sometimes this person that you had a horrible experience with, you never, ever see them again. Fantastic. But sometimes, like a bad penny, they turn up in the circles and you have to keep dealing with them. And if you're constantly in a bitching state, this person drives you nuts to the point that you can't control your emotions and you're constantly talking trash about them. People don't think that they're the trashy person.
Right.
They think that
until they tell you, until they tell you that all their exes were crazy.
Yes.
And you go, you're the only common denominator here, booby.
Yes. Oh God. Yes. That's the red flag alert when you're working with clients too. Everybody else I've worked with in the past has dropped the ball or let me down. Run away, screaming into the night.
Yeah. How many copywriters have you worked with before? 20? They all sucked?
No, it's not that they all sucked, honey. It's not that they all sucked.
Do tell.
Oh, man. I could keep talking about all this for hours, but we've been going at it for quite a while. So I'm going to end it here and say, hey, we'll do an episode 3. So tell us more about where to learn about you.
LinkedIn.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's it. Cool.
Hey, I keep it simple. LinkedIn or Copy Chief. I hang out there too.
Awesome. I'll make sure that they have clickable links to all of this. And just thank you so much for being on the show. I always love when we have a chance to talk like this.
I do too. We'll be talking like tomorrow anyway. So.
Yep. All right. Talk to you next time, Carolyn. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Angie. Bye.
So that is it. Another awesome episode of Permission to Kick Ass on the books. If you want to know more about the show, if you want to know more about me, Angie Coley, and the mission I'm on to help entrepreneurs punch fear in the face and do big, bold things, then head on over to permissiontokickass.com. That is all one word together, permissiontokickass.com. Make sure to sign up for my email list so that you know whenever there's a hot, fresh, and ready podcast episode out for you. And also on Mondays, I like to send out a little newsletter called Kick Monday's Ass. I'm sure you're totally surprised by that. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm Angie Coley. Make sure that you share this with a friend that needs to hear this message today. Like it, share it, comment wherever you're listening to this today, and let's go kick some ass.